Universities are meant to be sanctuaries of learning, where students come to chase their dreams, forge lifelong friendships, and shape their futures. But sometimes, beneath the surface of these seemingly peaceful campuses, dark and horrifying events unfold, events that forever shatter the illusion of safety. In this video, we'll dive deep into 3 stories of shocking campus murders, stories that turned places of education into crime scenes and left a legacy of fear and mystery. In the early morning hours of January 15, 1978, chaos descended upon the Chi Omega sorority house at Florida State University. Ted Bundy, one of the most notorious serial killers in American history, was lurking in the shadows, ready to unleash unspeakable violence. The sorority sisters inside had no way of knowing the terror that was about to strike. Bundy, who had recently escaped from a Colorado jail, had traveled over 1,300 miles to Tallahassee. And now he wandered the Florida State University campus, blending in as just another face. Around 3 a.m., he approached the Chi Omega house, an elegant structure with a history of sisterhood. But on this night, it would become the site of horror. Finding an unlocked back door, Bundy slipped inside unnoticed. Most of the women were asleep after a night out, unaware that a predator had just entered their sanctuary. Moving silently, Bundy crept upstairs and entered the first room. Margaret Bowman, a 21-year-old student, lay fast asleep in her bed. Bundy picked up a piece of firewood he had brought with him and brutally struck her in the head, killing her instantly. Without a sound, Bundy turned and moved to the next room. Here he found 20-year-old Levy also sleeping. Bundy attacked her with the same viciousness, bludgeoning her with the firewood before turning his rage into something even darker. He sexually assaulted her and even bit her savagely, leaving behind deep teeth marks that would later become key evidence in his trial. With 2 women dead, Bundy wasn't finished. He slipped down the hallway, entering the next room where Kleiner and Chandler slept. They too would feel the wrath of Bundy. He savagely beat them, battering them with the same firewood that had killed Bowman and Levy. The 2 women awoke to the horror, confused and disoriented as Bundy struck them repeatedly. They were left seriously injured, broken jaws, shattered skulls. But somehow, they survived. Before anyone in the house fully grasped what was happening, Bundy slipped out into the night, vanishing into the shadows just as silently as he had arrived. In less than 15 minutes, he had brutally murdered 2 women and seriously injured 2 others, all while the rest of the sorority remained unaware. The crime scene at the Chi Omega house was a gruesome one. Blood stained the walls, and the sorority sisters awoke to the horror of what had happened within the safety of their own home. The entire campus and soon the nation would be gripped with fear as the news spread that Ted Bundy, the charming law student turned serial killer, had reemerged. The Chi Omega murders remain one of the most chilling chapters in Bundy's reign of terror. An event that shook not only Florida State University but the entire country, serving as a grim reminder of the depravity hiding behind Bundy's charming facade. The Chi Omega murders remain one of the most chilling chapters in Bundy's reign of terror. An event that shook Florida State University to the core. On the fateful night of November 13, 2022, the tranquil college town of Moscow, Idaho, was rocked by a brutal crime that would send shockwaves across the nation. At the University of Idaho's Kappa Alpha Theta sorority house, a horrific act of violence claimed the lives of 4 young students in a chilling display of brutality. The victims, Kaylee Goncalves, Madison Mogen, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin, were well-known and well-loved members of the university community. On that night, they were celebrating and spending time together in their shared residence, unaware of the terror that was about to unfold. The attack was swift and ruthless. The assailant, later identified as Bryan Kohberger, a graduate student at nearby Washington State University, broke into the house in the dead of night. Armed with a knife, he went from room to room, targeting the students with a savage efficiency that left a scene of horror. The brutality of the crime was evident from the extensive injuries inflicted on the victims, who were found in their beds. The murder scene was discovered by surviving roommates who had been out during the attack. The shock of finding their friends' bodies and realizing the enormity of what had happened set off a frantic search for the killer. As the investigation unfolded, the sheer violence of the crime and the fact that it occurred in what was supposed to be a safe environment for the students heightened the sense of fear and urgency. For months, investigators worked tirelessly to track down the perpetrator. The case gained national attention, with media coverage focusing on the gruesome details and the search for justice. Bryan Kohberger was eventually apprehended in December 2022, following a meticulous investigation that included forensic analysis, surveillance footage, and extensive interviews. Kohberger's arrest shocked the nation, not only because of the violence of the crime, but also due to his position as a graduate student in criminal justice. which seemed to contrast starkly with his actions. The case was marked by a highly publicized trial where the brutality of the murders and the cold demeanor of Kohberger were laid bare for the world to see. The Idaho murders left a deep scar on the University of Idaho community and beyond. The tragedy underscored the vulnerability of college students and sparked a broader conversation about campus safety and the psychological factors that can lead to such extreme violence. On November 28, 1969, a chilling event shattered the peaceful atmosphere of Penn State University. Betsy Aardsma, a 22-year-old graduate student, was murdered in one of the last places anyone would expect, a quiet corner of the university library. What started as a typical afternoon of research for Betsy turned into a mystery that still lingers over half a century later, leaving investigators baffled and the community in shock. Betsy Aardsma had grown up in Holland, Michigan, and was known for her bright, kind personality. She was pursuing her master's degree in English and seemed to have her whole life ahead of her. That November day, after spending the afternoon with her boyfriend, she decided to visit the library to work on a research paper. Penn State's Pate Library was almost empty, with many students having already left for the Thanksgiving break. The quiet, dimly lit stacks section of the library offered Betsy the perfect place to focus on her work. At around 4:45 p.m., tragedy struck. In the silence of the stacks, someone approached Betsy and, without warning, stabbed her in the chest with a single swift blow. The blade punctured her heart, and in a matter of moments, she collapsed. The scene was eerily calm. No one heard her scream, and only a faint noise drew the attention of a couple of nearby students. When they found Betsy, they assumed she had fainted, unaware of the fatal injury she had just suffered. The single stab wound didn't produce much blood, and the library remained unaware that a murder had just taken place. The horror of the situation only became clear when Betsy was rushed to the Rittenauer Health Center on campus. It was there, during the medical examination, that doctors discovered the stab wound in her chest. Despite the efforts to save her, it was already too late. Betsy was gone. Her sudden death sent shockwaves through the university, and the investigation into her murder began immediately. Investigators were met with a confounding lack of evidence. No one had seen the attacker, and the narrow, secluded aisles of the stacks offered few clues. The weapon was never recovered, and there were no clear fingerprints or other forensic evidence left behind. The case grew cold almost immediately, and as the days turned into months, hope for a quick resolution faded. The case went unsolved for decades until Richard Hafner, a former Penn State student, became a suspect. He was eventually arrested and charged with Aardsma's murder in 2022, largely due to advances in DNA technology that connected him to the crime. Decades later, her death is still a chilling reminder that sometimes, even in the most mundane of places, unimaginable horrors can occur. These three tragic cases serve as a grim reminder that even places which are often seen as safe havens are not immune to senseless violence. Thank you for watching this video. If you'd like to see more of our content, please hit the subscribe button.